teachers, guardians, children, and anybody who is interested in the life of children who require additional support or additional help. Welcome to another episode of the Defawa podcast. I am so happy that you're here. Thank you so much for tuning in. And for those who are new, welcome to this podcast. Here we talk about special needs children and the support that they may require and the help that we can all together as a community pull together and offer. And so this season, we're talking about the causes of disability. Last week, we had an introduction and we said that disability can be a cause of developmental and behavioral challenges in children. And we realized that one of the biggest gray areas that most parents or teachers or anybody who deals with special needs children, one of the challenges that they have is understanding what brought this on. And so we decided to do a series on what can bring about disability. I said I'm not going to answer all the questions because I don't have all the answers, but we're going to try together to decipher some of the causes. And so this week we are talking about one of the causes of disability, which is genetics. So human beings are made up of millions and billions and trillions of small building blocks known as cells. Inside a cell, in the middle of a cell, is an area called a nucleus. And inside that nucleus is a unique identifying mark of every human being known as the DNA. And I know you've had this term DNA being thrown around during paternity suits and when trying to find out who the criminal may have been. The DNA is not only used to identify people, but it also used to determine the special characteristics that this person is going to have. Physical characteristics such as how tall they will be, how heavy they will be, what kind of color of hair their hair will be, what kind of color their eyes would be, what kind of bone structure that they will have. The DNA also directs how this person processes their body functions, like how fast does this person digest their food, for example. How does this person react to external stimuli? How does this person process information? What personality will this person have? What kind of diseases is this person susceptible to? And this DNA is influenced by our parents, our relatives, and our ancestors. So some of the DNA will be passed on from generation to generation. And during this process of passing on DNA from generation to generation, during the reproduction, there may be errors or there may be changes in the DNA which can bring about disability. Okay, so let's go back to the DNA. Now, the DNA, as we said, is material that is inherited from both our parents through strands known as chromosomes. Okay, so inside the nucleus, you have the DNA, and the DNA is arranged. Okay, the DNA is such a big, molecule. I think if it were to be opened up and stretched, it would be quite long. So the human body has this DNA arranged in a pattern and in a code, and these patterns are arranged in strands we call chromosomes, and these chromosomes look something like this, and inside each strand there's tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of code that we now call DNA. So these chromosomes are naturally supposed to be a particular length. Okay, so imagine this is a chromosomal strand. So it's supposed to be a particular length. It's supposed to look a particular way. It's supposed to weigh a particular, weight. And it's supposed to have specific characteristics for proper functioning of the human body. Okay, and all this DNA, all these chromosomes, they're about 46 in number. Okay, they're supposed to be arranged in a particular pattern. So it's not just about how the DNA is arranged inside the chromosomal strand, it's also about how the strands are arranged inside the nucleus of a cell. Hope it makes sense. It can be quite confusing, even for me. All right, so any change in the length of this chromosome or in the arrangement of the DNA inside the strand, the chromosomal strand, any change in the appearance, any change in the weight, any change in the order of the chromosomes can result in diseases that then can be passed from parent to child during the process of reproduction and during the process of how the cells fuse when a baby is being formed. I will not go into the science of that because it's beyond our lesson study for today. So diseases can come up if there is any change in what we have described, and these diseases may cause disability in the child. And once there is a disability, there may be changes or challenges in how the baby will develop and in how the baby will behave. I'm going to give you a few examples, okay? So we have a disease known as achondroplasia. Okay, some of you parents may have heard of achondroplasia. Achondroplasia is a genetic illness arising from the gene that codes for bone and cartilage. Remember, we said DNA codes for everything, including how bones are going to be laid down in your body, including how fast those bones are going to break down, including how long those bones are going to be. And DNA controls that by use of proteins that are formed by how the components of the DNA are arranged. Okay, so if there is a challenge or a problem in how the components of the DNA are arranged, and those components happen to be the one that control the function of bone and cartilage, there might arise a problem. So this gene that codes for bone and cartilage function also codes for how tall the child is going to be, how strong the bones are going to be, how the joints are going to look like. So children with achondroplasia may appear to have short limbs. Okay, they may have, the frontal part of their head may appear to be bigger than for most children. They will end up being short, and once that is, you have short limbs and a short stature and a relatively imbalance between the upper part of your body and the lower part of your body, that means you might have difficulty in your movement and in your walking. Some of them even end up having hearing loss, and so they may have deafness or a degree of hearing impairments. They also may have speech affected, because once your hearing is affected, then your speech also becomes affected, because you can only speak what you have heard or what you have been trained to say. And so achondroplasia is a disease that is passed down from parent to child in a specific fashion, and so it's not uncommon to notice that in a line of family there are shorter people with particular limb differences, and then they may end up having hearing or a movement impairment, which may cause disability and therefore may affect their development. Another example I'm going to talk about is Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So Duchenne muscular dystrophy is a genetic disorder, and it affects mostly boys, which means it's passed down from the maternal side. So there is a whole science of how the maternal side may pass down some diseases to the boys, because it's only the mother who can donate the X chromosome that's going to give the boy part of his genetic male code of XY. All right, so Duchenne muscular dystrophy is a genetic disorder. It affects mostly boys, and it causes weakness of muscles, especially muscles of the legs and muscles of the chest. So this means children may have difficulty walking, standing up, running, or jumping. So these are children who may have a delay of movement, running, walking, jumping up, riding bicycles. It doesn't mean they will never do it. It just means it may be a little bit delayed, or it means that when they do it, it may not look like what you're used to. So we're just shedding light on what may be the cause of some of these problems, okay? Another disease that may be genetically passed down is called Rett syndrome. This is a genetic disorder. This one now affects mostly girls, and it leads to developmental challenges, especially when it comes to their speech and their intellect. This is a disease where the girl develops normally, the girl is walking, talking, just like her peers at the right age, and then all of a sudden there is a regression. The girls start going backwards. Maybe they were speaking, they could, recite a whole paragraph from memory. All of a sudden, they're just doing 5 words. Maybe they had achieved toilet training before. All of a sudden, they're wetting their pants. Maybe they were okay playing with other children and interacting with other children, but now all of a sudden they want to stay alone. They don't want to interact with people. So if you notice this in a girl child, and if this is something that you have heard happens in a particular family, we may be dealing with Rett syndrome, and so it's important to have this child referred for appropriate care. And then we have a disease known as Angelman syndrome. Syndrome is another genetic disease that is caused by deletion of one of the areas of the DNA. So during the process of reproduction, as genetic code is being passed down from parent to child, as we live in this world, in our environments, with the different challenges and diseases that we are exposed to, our DNA can change. And that's what we call mutation. So mutation is just a fancy word for changes. One of these changes can be deletion. And deletion means a DNA code is supposed to look like this. So maybe something happens and that part of the DNA code is gone, it's deleted. And when a deletion happens in a particular part of the DNA code, it can cause Angelman syndrome. And Angelman syndrome can lead to intellectual disability. So these are children who may struggle learning concepts if taught in a particular, most often traditional and conventional manner. They may need support, and they may need a special way of delivering education to them, particularly in school. So when you see some children, especially as teachers, who are struggling to understand what you're teaching them, who are not bringing the grades that we think they are capable of, it is important to remember that the reason could be that they may have an intellectual disability, and perhaps the style and the manner and the way that we deliver this information to them may need to be relooked. Another syndrome and another disease that may cause disability and that is brought on by genetic changes is something we call Fragile X syndrome. And this is another disease that affects mostly boys, which means it's passed down from the maternal side of the inheritance pool, because it's the X chromosome that is affected, and boys only get the X chromosome from their moms. So boys with this Fragile X syndrome, again, will have intellectual disability. They may also have social disabilities in terms of relating to other people, or behavioral challenges when it comes to how to process information and how to respond to that information. These are only a few examples that I have picked to try and help us understand some of the causes of disability. We were talking about genetic causes of disability. Remember, there are many causes of disability, and we're going to talk about some of them. And this week we were talking about genetic causes of disability. So it's important to know this so that you know about your family history, so that you know about your partner's family history. In an ideal world, there would be genetic screening before all pairings, but that's not possible. But it's important to know what could be some of the causes of disability, so that if it's genetic, we can try and prevent them. There are various ways of preventing genetic diseases that may lead to disability. One of the ways could be IVF, in vitro fertilization, where the embryo is pre-selected and pre-screened for any genetic illness, and therefore the parents are encouraged that the child that they're going to have is a child who is free from any genetic malfunction. However, we do accept and we love and we honor all our children who may have disability, whether the cause is genetic or whichever way, and we are going to support them, and we are going to help them, and we are going to make sure that they experience life maximally despite their disabilities. Remember to consult your doctor or your nurse or your pediatrician or your therapist for more information. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, please drop a comment or a chat in the box provided below. You can also email us at info@difaba, DIFFABA.com. Until next time, have a good one.